I stood outside my own graduation party venue in my cap and gown, stunned after my aunt's cruel words. The party I worked so hard for the celebration of my academic achievements despite personal struggles, and I was being told it's just for close family. Looking through the glass doors, I saw distant cousins, family, friends, and even my aunt's book club members mingling inside. When my aunt suggested I wait in the parking lot until they were ready for me, I made a split-second decision that would change everything. I took off my cap and gown, turned around, and said, "Guess I'll celebrate elsewhere." My dad followed me out, shocked. My name is Audrey, and until that moment outside the venue, I thought I understood what family meant. I'm 22 years old and just graduated college with honors in psychology, something that shouldn't have been possible considering what happened during my freshman year. 3 years ago, on an ordinary Tuesday in March, my phone rang during a study group session. My dad was calling, his voice cracking as he told me to come to Memorial Hospital right away. My mother had collapsed at the grocery store. By the time I arrived, she was gone. A sudden aneurysm that no one saw coming. 1 minute she was comparing prices on cereal, the next she was gone forever. I nearly dropped out that semester. The grief was like drowning on dry land, my lungs constantly burning for air that wouldn't come. My dad and I were shattered, two broken people trying to hold each other up while missing the person who had always been our foundation. Dad took leave from his accounting firm. I somehow finished my finals operating on autopilot, then spent the summer in a fog of grief. When sophomore year started, I had to face another reality. Money was tight. Mom's life insurance covered the funeral and some debts, but college expenses stretched our budget to the breaking point. I took on 2 part-time jobs while maintaining a full course load. Somehow, the busyness kept me functioning. I'd collapse exhausted each night, too tired to feel the full weight of my grief. Dad seemed to be coping in his own way. He threw himself into work, often staying at the office until 9 or 10 at night. I worried about him alone in the house that held so many memories. Then, during winter break of my junior year, he mentioned a new coworker named Patricia, who had transferred from the Dallas office. "She's really helped reorganize the filing system," he said over dinner one night. "She's been through a loss, too. Her husband died of cancer 5 years ago." I was happy he had someone to talk to who understood. I never imagined how quickly things would change. By spring break, Patricia was joining us for dinner regularly. By summer, they were engaged. And by the time I returned for my senior year, they were married in a small ceremony that happened so quickly, I barely had time to process it. Patricia moved into our home, rearranging furniture and redecorating rooms, before the ink on the marriage certificate was dry. That's when her sister Diane entered our lives. Diane was a tornado in human form, loud, opinionated, and leaving destruction in her wake. She had strong opinions about everything from how the towels should be folded to what we should eat for dinner. She lived 30 minutes away, but was suddenly at our house 4 or 5 times a week. "We're so blessed to have expanded our family," Patricia would say, while Diane nodded vigorously beside her. But it didn't feel like our family was expanding. It felt like it was being erased and rewritten. Photos of my mom began disappearing from shelves, replaced by artistic arrangements of seashells and decorative books. The kitchen cabinets were reorganized, my mom's recipe box relegated to the basement. When I mentioned these things to my dad, he would sigh. "They're just trying to make things nice, Audrey. Change can be good." I tried to be understanding. Dad deserved happiness after everything we'd been through. I told myself that once I finished senior year, things would improve. I planned to move back home after graduation to save money before graduate school. Maybe then I could find a new balance with Patricia and help Dad remember what our family had been before. As graduation approached, I mentioned having a small celebration in our backyard, the same way we'd celebrated my high school graduation with a barbecue and my mom's famous strawberry lemonade that I'd learned to make from her recipe. Patricia frowned when I brought it up. "Oh, honey, that's so quaint. But you're a college graduate now. This calls for something more sophisticated." Before I could protest, Patricia and Diane had taken over. They booked an expensive venue, the Glass Garden, a place Mom would have found ridiculously overpriced. They created guest lists and ordered catering without consulting me. When I tried to suggest inviting my close friends and professors who had supported me through my mother's death, Patricia would say, "We'll see if there's room," before changing the subject. I was deep in finals week when Patricia mentioned the invitations had gone out. "I didn't get to approve the guest list," I said, looking up from my textbooks. Oh, we handled it all, Diane chimed in, having appeared as she often did without warning. No need to stress yourself during finals. We invited all the important people. The day of graduation arrived. Dad, Patricia, and Diane attended the ceremony. Dad hugged me tightly afterward, his eyes glistening with tears. Your mom would be so proud, he whispered. Patricia quickly interrupted. We should head to the venue. Everyone will be arriving soon. That's when I noticed something odd. The invitation said the party starts at 6, I said. It's only 4:30. Patricia and Diane exchanged a quick glance. Oh, did we tell you 6? It's actually 5. Just a little mix-up with the printing, Patricia said smoothly. Why don't you go home and freshen up? We'll head over to make sure everything's set up properly. Something felt wrong, but I nodded, not wanting to create tension on what should be a happy day. I went home, changed into the dress I had bought for the occasion, and carefully repinned my cap. By the time I arrived at the glass garden, it was 5:45. I expected to be early, but the parking lot was full. Through the venue's glass walls, I could see the party was in full swing. As I approached the entrance, I spotted my best friend Jenna walking out, her face streaked with tears. Jenna, what's wrong? Where are you going? She looked up, surprised to see me. Audrey, I was just looking for you. Your aunt told me I needed to leave. She said it was family only and they didn't have room for college friends. I stared at her in confusion. That can't be right. You are family. You've been my best friend since 6th grade. Mom always said you were the daughter she got to choose. Jenna wiped her eyes. I tried telling her that, but she made it clear I wasn't welcome. She actually had security escort me to the door. Before I could process this, Diane appeared in the doorway, her eyes narrowing when she saw me talking to Jenna. Audrey, there you are. We've been waiting for you to make your entrance. Her gaze flicked dismissively to Jenna. I thought I made it clear this gathering is just for close family. I looked past her through the glass doors. I could see Dad's co-workers, Patricia's entire book club, and at least a dozen people I didn't recognize at all. I even spotted our mail carrier and Patricia's hairstylist mingling by the dessert table. But all those people inside aren't family, I said, confusion giving way to hurt. Diane's smile was thin. They're close to Patricia, dear. This is as much her celebration as yours. She's put so much effort into raising you this past year. Raising me, Patricia had been my stepmother for less than a year, and I was already an adult when they married. Now, Diane continued checking her watch. We're going to do the official welcome in about 30 minutes. Why don't you wait out here until we're ready for you? Maybe take a walk around the parking lot to kill some time. I stood there in my cap and gown, staring at a woman who was telling me to wait outside my own graduation party. I looked through the doors again and saw Patricia directing a photographer, my father, nowhere in sight. In that moment, something inside me, something that had been bending and accommodating for years, finally broke. I slowly removed my cap and gown, folded them carefully, and tucked them under my arm. You know what, I think I'll celebrate elsewhere. I turned and walked toward my car, my back straight, even as tears threatened. Behind me, I heard my father's voice. Audrey, where are you going? I turned to see Dad rushing out of the venue, his face confused and concerned. He looked from me to Diane, who stood in the doorway with her arms crossed. Ask your sister-in-law, I said, my voice breaking despite my best efforts. Apparently, I need to wait in the parking lot until they're ready for me at my own graduation party. The shock on my father's face told me he had no idea what had been happening. And that's when I realized the depth of deception that had been growing in our family since Patricia entered our lives. What is she talking about? Dad asked Diane, his voice rising with confusion. Diane waved dismissively. She's being dramatic, Thomas. I simply suggested she might want to make a grand entrance after everyone's settled. By waiting in the parking lot, Dad's eyebrows shot up. At her own graduation party, I stood by my car keys in hand, watching this exchange with a strange detachment. The pain was so acute it had circled around to numbness. Jenna stood nearby, her presence a silent support. Dad, they told Jenna to leave, I said quietly. Security escorted her out because Diane said it was family only. But the venue is full of people I barely know. Dad turned back to Diane, who was now examining her manicure with sudden interest. Is this true? He demanded. Thomas, we had limited space. Choices had to be made about the guest list. And frankly, Audrey's little college friends aren't as important as the connections Patricia has cultivated. These are people who can help Audrey's future. Dad's face darkened. This party is supposed to be celebrating Audrey's achievement. Her friends should absolutely be here. Well, Patricia and I handled the planning, and we felt Patricia, Dad called out, turning toward the venue. Patricia, could you come out here, please? A few moments later, Patricia appeared, her face arranged in a concerned expression that didn't quite reach her eyes. What's wrong, Audrey? Why aren't you coming inside? Everyone's waiting. Everyone except the people who actually matter to me, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. Why was Jenna asked to leave? Why did you tell me the party started at 6 when it actually started at 5? Patricia glanced at my father, then quickly composed herself. There must be some misunderstanding. Diane was simply helping manage the flow of guests. By throwing my best friend out, I challenged. Patricia sighed dramatically. Audrey, you've been under so much stress with finals. I think you're blowing this out of proportion. Dad stepped closer to me, really looking at my face for perhaps the first time in months. Why did you tell Audrey the wrong time for her own party? He asked Patricia without turning around. Patricia's mask of concern slipped for just a second. We wanted to make sure everything was perfect before she arrived. You know how she can be, Thomas, always finding fault with our efforts. The parking lot fell silent as my father looked back and forth between his wife, her sister, and me. I could almost see him processing the past year, reevaluating moments he'd dismissed. This isn't right, he finally said. None of this is right. Audrey, I'm so sorry. I had no idea they were planning to exclude your friends or make you wait outside. I felt tears welling up, the numbness giving way to raw emotion. It's not just today, Dad. Ever since they moved in, I've been made to feel like an inconvenience in my own home. Mom's things keep disappearing. They rescheduled my therapy appointments without telling me. Last month, I found the quilt Mom made me in a donation box headed for Goodwill. Dad looked stricken. Why didn't you tell me? I tried, but every time I brought something up, you said I was being sensitive or that I needed to give them a chance. My voice broke. You stopped listening to me, Dad. It was like when Mom died, I lost both parents. The words hung in the air between us. Dad took a step toward me, then another, until he could pull me into a tight hug. Over his shoulder, I saw Patricia and Diane exchanging glances. Let's go back inside, Dad, said, releasing me, but keeping an arm around my shoulders. We'll straighten this out right now. This is your celebration, and it should be exactly how you want it. Jenna hesitated. Maybe I should go. Absolutely not, Dad said firmly. Your family, Jenna. Always have been. We walked back toward the entrance, Dad leading our small procession with a determination I hadn't seen since before Mom died. Patricia and Diane had already gone back inside, and as we approached the doors, I could hear Patricia's voice addressing the crowd. And we're so excited to announce that Audrey has received a job offer in Seattle and will be moving there next month. We're going to miss her terribly, of course, but we're so proud she'll be starting her career across the country. Dad stopped short. What job in Seattle? You never mentioned any job in Seattle. I stared through the glass in disbelief. Because there isn't one. I never applied for jobs in Seattle. I've been planning to move home and apply to graduate programs nearby, just like I've been telling you all year. Dad's face hardened as he pushed open the doors. The crowd turned to look at us, and Patricia's speech faltered mid-sentence. Oh, here she is now. The woman of the hour, Patricia recovered smoothly. Audrey, darling, come tell everyone about your exciting new position in Seattle. There is no job in Seattle, I said clearly, my voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room. I've never applied for a job there, and I've never planned to move there. Patricia's smile remained fixed, though her eyes hardened. Don't be modest, sweetie. It's a wonderful opportunity. Patricia, my father cut in, his voice sharp. Stop this right now. Why are you telling people Audrey is moving to Seattle when that's not true? A murmur ran through the crowd as guests looked uncomfortably at each other. I recognized the moment for what it was, the beginning of an unraveling that had been a long time coming. Patricia's smile finally faltered. Thomas, perhaps we should discuss this privately. No, I said, finding my voice. No more private discussions where I'm talked about but not included. No more decisions about my life being made without me. I turned to address the uncomfortable crowd. I'm sorry, everyone. It seems there's been some confusion about the purpose of today's gathering. This was supposed to be a celebration of my college graduation with the people who have supported me through some very difficult years. Instead, it's become something else entirely. An older woman I recognized as one of Mom's closest friends stood up from a table in the corner. Audrey, sweetheart, we came here to celebrate you. Some of us were surprised by the invitation since we haven't been allowed to see much of you this past year. What do you mean not allowed? Dad asked. Susan, my godmother and my mother's best friend since childhood, approached us. Thomas, I've tried calling the house dozens of times. Patricia always says Audrey is too busy to come to the phone. When I've stopped by, I've been told you were both out. After a while, I got the message that I wasn't welcome anymore. Dad looked bewildered. I never knew you called or visited. Patricia stepped forward, her face flushed. Thomas, these people are exaggerating. I was simply protecting your time together as a new family. We needed space to bond without constant reminders of the past. Reminders of the past, Susan repeated incredulously. You mean Allison, your wife's best friend, the woman who made you godfather to her children? Patricia's face hardened. What's done is done. Audrey needs to move forward, not dwell in grief. That's why the Seattle opportunity is so perfect. There is no Seattle opportunity, I exclaimed. Why are you making this up? Patricia pulled out her phone. It's not made up. I have the email right here. She held up the screen showing an email that appeared to be a job offer from a company called Westlake Behavioral Health. I stepped closer, scanning the text in confusion until my eyes fixed on a critical detail. This email is addressed to you, not me, I pointed out. And it's a response to an application I never submitted. I took the phone from her unresisting hand and scrolled through her emails. What I found made my stomach drop. You've been applying to jobs in my name. There are dozens of applications here, all for places thousands of miles away, and you've been corresponding with these companies pretending to be me. Dad moved to look at the screen, his expression darkening as he scrolled through the evidence. Patricia, what is this? Why would you do this? Patricia snatched her phone back. I was helping Audrey was too focused on moving back home and attending graduate school nearby. She needs to spread her wings, not cling to her childhood. I was creating opportunities by forging applications in my name, by lying to me and everyone else. My voice shook with fury and betrayal. You weren't creating opportunities, you were trying to get rid of me. The venue had grown uncomfortably quiet as the other guests witnessed our family falling apart in real time. I could feel the weight of their stares, a mixture of sympathy and morbid fascination. Diane stepped forward, attempting damage control. Everyone, please enjoy the refreshments. The kitchen has prepared a wonderful selection of appetizers. Perhaps we could give the family some privacy. But it was too late. The careful facade Patricia and Diane had constructed was crumbling rapidly, and I was only just beginning to understand how deep their deception went. The party guests shifted, uncomfortably torn between the social awkwardness of witnessing a family dispute and the undeniable drama unfolding before them. Patricia grabbed my father's arm and tried to steer him toward a side room. Thomas, let's discuss this privately. Audrey is clearly overwhelmed and misunderstanding the situation. My father stood his ground, something I hadn't seen him do in over a year. No, Patricia. I think we need to clear this up right now. Why are there job applications with Audrey's name on them that she never submitted? Patricia's pleasant mask slipped further. I was helping her. She's been so lost since Allison died, clinging to the past and to you. She needs independence, not to move back home like a child. That was never your decision to make, I said, scrolling further through her emails that I'd already seen. And it wasn't just job applications, was it? You've been writing to graduate programs too, declining offers on my behalf. Dad's head whipped around. What? I held up the phone, showing an email from Patricia to the psychology department at State University, the school I'd been dreaming of attending for my graduate work. In it, I declined their offer of admission with a generous fellowship. I never even knew they accepted me, I said, my voice hollow. I've been checking my email daily, waiting to hear back. You intercepted this somehow. Dad took the phone and read the email, his face growing increasingly pale. Patricia, this is fraud. This could be a criminal offense. Patricia's face flushed red. Don't be ridiculous. I was acting in Audrey's best interest. She's been making terrible decisions, refusing to move on with her life. Someone had to intervene. By sabotaging my future, I asked incredulously. Susan stepped forward, her expression grim. Audrey, have you been receiving all your mail at the house? I looked at her in confusion. I'm not sure. I haven't gotten much lately, but I assumed that was normal. Susan pulled an envelope from her purse. I sent this to you 3 weeks ago. It came back to me yesterday, marked return to sender, not at this address. But Thomas just confirmed you're still living at home. Dad took the envelope, examining the return stamp. This looks like it was done by hand, not the post office. He turned to Patricia. Have you been intercepting Audrey's mail? Patricia's composure was crumbling by the second. Only junk mail and things that would upset her. She doesn't need constant reminders of her mother from Susan and the rest of Allison's friends. That's not your decision to make, Dad said firmly. That's mail fraud, Patricia. It's a federal offense. A strange calm was settling over me as the pieces clicked into place. What else have you been keeping from me? What else have you been hiding? Diane stepped between us, her face a mask of indignation. Now see here, my sister has done nothing but try to help this family move forward. You're both being completely ungrateful after everything she's sacrificed. Sacrificed, I repeated. She moved into our home and systematically erased every trace of my mother. She intercepted my mail, sabotaged my education, and has been lying to everyone about me moving away. What exactly has she sacrificed? I turned to the gathered guests, many of whom had been my mother's friends. Did any of you send me cards, letters, or invitations in the past year? Did you try to contact me and never hear back? Hands raised around the room, faces showing dawning realization. My mother's cousin stepped forward. I sent you a birthday check for $500 last September. When I never got a thank you note, I called Patricia. She said you were too busy with school to write, but you were very grateful. I never received any check, I said, my stomach sinking. I worked double shifts on my birthday to cover my textbook costs. More voices joined in a chorus of attempted communications that had never reached me. Cards with cash invitations to family events, offers of support and connection, all intercepted by Patricia and Diane. My father looked stunned as the evidence mounted. I could see him processing a year's worth of isolation and confusion, recognizing the slow, deliberate way Patricia had separated us from our support network. There's more, I said, scrolling further through Patricia's phone while she tried unsuccessfully to grab it back. She's been texting with Diane about renovating my bedroom. Dad frowned. What do you mean? We talked about repainting it this summer. I held up the phone, showing him the exchange. Patricia contractor coming Tuesday to price, converting A's room to home gym. Need it done before graduation. Diane perfect. No room for her equals no moving back home. My father took the phone, reading message after message detailing their plans to prevent me from moving back home after graduation. His hands were shaking by the time he handed the phone back to Patricia. How could you do this? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. She's my daughter. She's all I have left of Allison. Patricia's face hardened. That's exactly the problem, Thomas. You never stop seeing Allison when you look at her. Our marriage will never be whole as long as you're clinging to the past through Audrey. The naked truth of her resentment hung in the air between us. It wasn't just about me. It was about erasing my mother, completely removing the last living reminder of the woman my father had loved before Patricia. I think you should leave, Dad said quietly. Patricia stared at him in disbelief. What? You heard me. Take your sister and leave. Now. I need time to think about what happens next. Diane puffed up like an angry bird. You can't throw us out. Do you have any idea how much this venue cost? Who do you think paid for all this? A cold realization washed over me. Did you use my college fund to pay for this party? The flash of guilt across Patricia's face told me everything. Dad saw it too. The education account, the one Allison set up when Audrey was born. You said that money was tied up in investments until next year. Patricia's chin lifted defiantly. The party is an investment in our family's social standing. Besides, it's not like Audrey needs it anymore now that she has the Seattle position. The position that doesn't exist because you made it up, I asked incredulously. You stole my education fund for a party I didn't even want at a venue. I never chose with guests who aren't even my friends or family. The room had gone completely silent. Even the catering staff had stopped to watch the unfolding drama. Patricia gathered her purse, her face a rigid mask. I can see we're not going to have a productive conversation right now. You're both upset and not thinking clearly. We can discuss this at home, Thomas, when you've calmed down. She headed for the door, Diane trailing behind her like a loyal lieutenant. At the threshold, Patricia turned back. Audrey, I've only ever wanted what's best for you. Someday you'll understand that breaking ties with the past is the only way to build a future. Her gaze shifted to my father. I'll be waiting at home when you're ready to be reasonable. After they left, the venue remained uncomfortably silent. Guests exchanged awkward glances, unsure whether to stay or go. I felt hollowed out as if the confrontation had scooped away something vital from inside me. Dad turned to the crowd. I'm very sorry you all had to witness that, but I'm more sorry that many of you were kept away from Audrey this past year through deception. That ends today. Susan approached us, wrapping me in a hug that smelled like the perfume my mother used to wear. Let's salvage what we can of this day, she suggested gently. Audrey still graduated with honors, and that deserves celebration. One by one, my mother's friends and our genuine family members approached to congratulate me. Someone turned up the music. The caterers, sensing the shift in mood, began circulating with trays again. It wasn't the joyful celebration I'd imagined, but it felt honest in a way the original party never could have been. Later, as Dad and I stood by the dessert table, he put his arm around my shoulders. "I've been blind," he said quietly, "and I've failed you." "You were grieving too," I reminded him. He shook his head. "That's no excuse. I let Patricia isolate us because it was easier than feeling the pain of missing your mother. I chose comfort over truth, and you paid the price." He squeezed my shoulder. "That stops now. Whatever it takes, we're going to fix this." I wanted to believe him, but as I looked around at the gathering, at the genuine affection of people who had known and loved my mother, I wondered how much damage had already been done, and whether some things could ever truly be repaired. The remainder of the party passed in a blur. By the time the last guest departed, exhaustion had settled deep in my bones. Dad insisted on driving me home, but as we pulled into the driveway, I hesitated. "I don't think I can face her tonight," I admitted. Dad's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "You shouldn't have to. Let me call Jenna and see if you can stay with her. I need to have a conversation with Patricia alone." 30 minutes later, I was settled in Jenna's apartment with an overnight bag hastily packed, while Patricia locked herself in the master bedroom. Jenna's roommate was away for the weekend, so I took her bed, staring at the unfamiliar ceiling as sleep eluded me. My phone buzzed around midnight, a text from Dad. "Patricia claims everything was done with good intentions. Says she was trying to protect us both from dwelling in grief. We'll talk more tomorrow. Love you." I read between the lines. Dad was wavering, already softening under Patricia's influence. I'd seen it happen countless times over the past year. His initial anger or concern gradually giving way to acceptance of whatever explanation Patricia offered. She was skilled at recasting her actions as well-intentioned, making Dad and me seem unreasonable for questioning her. Morning came after fitful sleep. Jenna made coffee and sat with me at her tiny kitchen table. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "I don't know." I wrapped my hands around the warm mug. Part of me wants to pack everything and never go back. Another part feels like I'd be abandoning Dad if I did that. "Your dad's a grown man, Audrey. He chose Patricia." He was vulnerable, I said, feeling the familiar need to defend him. "After Mom died, he was so lost. We both were." "That explains it, but it doesn't excuse everything that's happened." Jenna reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You deserve better than being pushed out of your own life." Around 10, Dad texted again, asking to meet for lunch. I suggested a cafe downtown neutral territory away from both Patricia and Jenna. When I arrived, he was already waiting, looking like he'd aged years overnight. "How are you holding up?" he asked as I slid into the booth. "Honestly, I feel like I'm in shock. I knew things were bad, but I had no idea how calculated it all was." Dad nodded, rubbing his face tiredly. "I spoke with Patricia for hours last night. She admitted to intercepting your mail and declining the graduate school offer, but she insists she was trying to help you become independent. By sabotaging my future, by stealing my education fund, I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice." "Dad, you can't possibly believe that." "I don't know what to believe anymore," he confessed. "We've been through so much, and Patricia has been a support to me when I was at my lowest. She made some terrible choices, but people make mistakes when they're trying to build a new family." I stared at him in disbelief. "These weren't mistakes, Dad. They were deliberate actions taken over months to push me out of your life. She was separating you from everyone who knew Mom, not just me." "I think she was trying to help us move forward," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. "Moving forward doesn't mean erasing Mom or cutting off the people who loved her." I pushed my untouched sandwich away, my appetite gone. "What about the education fund? Is that just a mistake too?" Dad looked down. "Patricia says she borrowed from it temporarily for house renovations. She claims she was planning to replace it before you needed it for graduate school. With what money? And how convenient that she also made sure I wouldn't get into graduate programs nearby. The pieces align too perfectly to be coincidence. Dad, she's manipulating you. She's been doing it since you met her." "That's a serious accusation, Audrey." "Is it? Look at the evidence. Look at how isolated we've become from everyone who used to be important to us. Look at how she's systematically removed Mom from our home, from our lives. This isn't about moving forward, it's about control. Dad was silent for a long moment. I need time to sort through all this. In the meantime, I think it might be best if Patricia stayed with Diane for a while. It would give us space to figure things out. It wasn't the strong stand I'd hoped for, but it was something. And the education fund, I've already called the bank. Patricia shouldn't have had access to that account at all. I'm meeting with the manager tomorrow to find out exactly what happened and how much is left. We parted with an awkward hug, both of us feeling the strain of everything left unsaid. I returned to Jenna's apartment to find Susan waiting with takeout from my favorite Italian restaurant. I thought you could use some comfort food, she said, pulling me into a hug. Jenna let me in before she left for work. We sat on Jenna's sofa, plates of fettuccine Alfredo balanced on our knees as I filled Susan in on my conversation with Dad. He's torn, I concluded. I can see it in his eyes. He knows what Patricia did was wrong, but he doesn't want to believe she's been manipulating him all along. Susan sighed. Your father loved your mother deeply, Audrey. When she died, it left a hole in him that he desperately wanted to fill. People in that state are vulnerable to someone like Patricia, who knows exactly what to say and do to seem like the perfect solution. But how could he not see what she was doing to our family? To me, grief blinds us to many things, Susan said gently. And Patricia is clearly skilled at isolating her targets. It's a classic technique of manipulative people. Separate someone from their support system, then rewrite their reality. I pushed pasta around my plate. What should I do now? I can't keep staying with Jenna indefinitely. You could stay with me, Susan offered immediately. I have the guest room all made up. It would give you space from the situation while you figure out next steps. But what about Dad? I feel like if I leave completely, Patricia wins. She'll have him all to herself with no one to counter her version of reality. Susan considered this. What about your graduate school applications? Is there any way to salvage those? The question sparked something in me. The deadline for State University has passed, but maybe if I explained the situation. I still have the email where Patricia declined the fellowship offer and she admitted to Dad that she did it. That's a place to start, Susan encouraged. Focus on securing your future first. As for your father, sometimes people have to find their own way out of these situations. You can support him without sacrificing yourself in the process. The next day, I called the graduate admissions office at State University. To my surprise, the administrator was sympathetic to my situation. Unfortunately, we've already allocated all our fellowship funds for the coming year, she explained. But, given the extraordinary circumstances, I can speak with the department chair about reinstating your admission without financial support. It wasn't ideal. Without the fellowship, I'd need loans to cover tuition. But it was a lifeline I hadn't expected. Dad called that evening with mixed news. Patricia had agreed to stay with Diane temporarily, but she'd been crying and promising to do better before she left. The bank meeting revealed she'd withdrawn nearly $30,000 from my education fund over the past 6 months. The banker says it's complicated because I added Patricia to some of my accounts after we married, Dad explained, sounding defeated. She used that to convince them she had authorization for the education account too. Can we get it back? I asked, already knowing the answer. We can try, but much of it was spent on home renovations and other things. Like my graduation party at the venue I never wanted. Like the designer clothes Patricia bought. Like the luxury spa weekends she and Diane took as self-care. I've spoken with a lawyer, Dad continued. He's advised me to separate our finances immediately while we sort through this. Does that mean you're considering divorce? I hardly dared to hope. Dad sighed heavily. I don't know yet, Audrey. This is all happening so fast. I need time to think clearly. I bit back my frustration. To me, the path forward seemed obvious. Patricia had manipulated, deceived, and stolen from us. What was there to think about? That night, Susan helped me draft emails to other graduate programs explaining my situation, hoping some might still consider me for late admission. We were at her kitchen table working when my phone lit up with texts from Diane. How dare you destroy my sister's marriage, after everything she's done for you and your father. You've always been jealous of her. Thomas was finally happy until you turned him against her with your lies. Message after message poured in, each more venomous than the last. I showed them to Susan, who frowned deeply. This is not normal behavior, she said. You should block her number, but save these messages first. They might be important later. More messages arrived the next morning, this time from unknown numbers. friends of Patricia and Diane spreading their version of events. According to them, I was an ungrateful daughter who couldn't accept my father's happiness, who'd fabricated accusations because I was mentally unstable with grief. I showed Dad the messages when he came to Susan's house that afternoon. His face darkened as he read them. "This stops now," he said, firmly pulling out his phone to call Patricia. But something had changed overnight. Patricia answered on speaker, her voice cool and controlled. "Thomas, I think we need to consider that Audrey might need professional help. Her behavior at the party, these wild accusations. Grief can manifest in destructive ways. My friend Lisa's daughter went through something similar after her father died." I stared at the phone in disbelief as Patricia continued. "I've been reading about complicated grief syndrome. The symptoms match what we've seen with Audrey. Paranoia, fabricating conspiracies, pushing away people trying to help her. I blame myself for not recognizing it sooner." Dad's face had shifted from anger to concern. "That's not what's happening here, Patricia. We found concrete evidence of mistakes I made trying to help her move forward," Patricia interrupted smoothly, "which I've already apologized for. But don't you think her reaction has been extreme, the way she's turned everyone against me? That's not healthy, Thomas." I could see doubt creeping into my father's expression, the same pattern playing out again as Patricia reframed the narrative. This time I was being cast not as an ungrateful daughter but as a mentally unstable one. Susan cut in, leaning toward the phone. "This is Susan Blackwell. I've known Audrey her entire life, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with her mental health. What's happening here is a textbook case of manipulation and gaslighting." There was a moment of silence before Patricia's voice returned harder now. "I don't think this conversation is productive if you've already involved outside parties, Thomas. I suggest we speak privately with a marriage counselor. And perhaps Audrey should consider seeing a therapist rather than making accusations against family members who only want to help her." After the call ended, Dad sat heavily on Susan's sofa. "Could she be right? Is it possible you're processing grief in a way that's affecting your perception?" The betrayal of that question hit me like a physical blow. "Are you serious right now? After everything we've uncovered?" "It's just that grief does strange things to people, to families. Your mother's death hit us both so hard." Susan placed a hand on my shoulder as I struggled to find words. "Thomas," she said firmly, "stop and think about what you're doing. This is exactly how Patricia has been manipulating you from the beginning, making you question your own perceptions, making Audrey the problem rather than her actions." But I could see it was too late. Dad had retreated into the comfortable narrative Patricia had constructed, where his daughter was troubled rather than truthful, where his wife was misunderstood rather than manipulative. "I think I should go," he said, rising. "I need some space to think about all this." After he left, I broke down in Susan's arms, feeling as though I'd lost my father all over again. Not to death this time, but to a manipulation so complete it had overwritten his ability to recognize truth when it was right in front of him. "What do I do now?" I asked through tears. Susan stroked my hair the way my mother used to. "You focus on rebuilding your life. You pursue your education. You surround yourself with people who see you clearly and love you truthfully. And you leave the door open for your father to find his way back when he's ready." It sounded both impossible and necessary. As Susan held me, I felt something shifting inside, grief giving way to a different emotion entirely. A steely determination was taking root alongside the realization that while I couldn't save my father from Patricia, I could and would fight for the future she had tried to steal from me. A week passed with minimal contact from my father. He texted daily with vague messages about working things out and finding a path forward, but each time I pressed for specifics, he became evasive. Meanwhile, I'd established a temporary routine at Susan's house, applying for jobs and reaching out to more graduate programs. State University had come through with reinstated admission, though without the fellowship I'd originally been offered. I was filling out loan applications when Dad finally called with news. "Patricia's coming home tomorrow," he said without preamble. My stomach dropped. "What? Why? Nothing's been resolved." "We've agreed to try marriage counseling," Dad explained. "Her therapist suggested it might be helpful for us to work through these issues together rather than separately." "Her therapist," I repeated. "Since when does Patricia have a therapist?" "She's been seeing someone for the past few days to work through her own issues. She recognizes she made mistakes, Audrey." The familiar pattern was playing out yet again, Patricia doing just enough to appear remorseful while maintaining her grip on my father. And what about the education fund, the graduate school applications she sabotaged, the mail she intercepted? Are those just mistakes, too? Dad sighed. We're going to work through everything in counseling. Patricia has agreed to help make things right financially, including finding a way to repay what was taken from your education fund. How? She doesn't even have a job. She's talking about selling some of her jewelry and using her inheritance from her first husband. She wants to make amends, Audrey. Shouldn't we at least give her that chance? I closed my eyes, trying to contain my frustration. Dad, don't you see what's happening? This is exactly what she's done every time. She does something terrible, then does just enough to seem sorry without actually taking responsibility. Then everything goes back to normal until the next time. People can change, he insisted, and marriages take work. This isn't about putting in work, it's about recognizing when someone is deliberately hurting your family. My voice had risen despite my efforts to stay calm. She stole my education fund, Dad. She intercepted my mail, a federal crime. She sabotaged my future. These aren't small mistakes. They're calculated actions taken over months. I understand you're upset. No, you don't. Because if you did, you wouldn't be letting her come back without any real consequences. There was silence on the line for a long moment. I think we both need some time to cool down, he finally said. I love you, Audrey, but I need to try to salvage my marriage too. After we hung up, I sat staring at my phone, a hollow feeling spreading through my chest. Susan found me there minutes later. He's letting her come back, I said numbly. She's convinced him to try counseling, and he thinks she's going to magically make everything right. Susan sat beside me, her face grave. I was afraid this might happen. Your father is caught in a cycle of manipulation that's very hard to break from the inside. So what do I do? Just accept that she won. That my father is choosing someone who hurt me deliberately over his own daughter. No, Susan said firmly. You continue building evidence and working to secure your own future. Sometimes the only way people recognize manipulation is when they see concrete proof that can't be explained away. The next day, I received a call from my mother's cousin Elaine, who had mentioned sending me a birthday check at the graduation party. Audrey, I've been going through my bank statements from the past year. That check I sent you for your birthday. It was cashed 3 days after I mailed it. I have the image of the endorsed check from my bank. It's your name on the back, but the handwriting doesn't look like yours. My heart raced. Could you send me a copy of that image? Already emailed it to you. And honey, I asked around. Several other family members sent you checks or gift cards that you apparently never received. We're all pulling our records now. By that evening, I had evidence of 8 checks totaling over $2,000 that had been intercepted, endorsed, and cashed. All in my name, but none in my handwriting. Susan suggested taking the evidence to my father in person, rather than calling to prevent Patricia from intercepting or spinning the information. We drove to the house the next day. Patricia answered the door, her face arranged in a welcoming smile that faltered when she saw Susan beside me. Audrey, what a nice surprise. Your father didn't mention you were coming by. He doesn't know, I said, keeping my voice steady. We need to speak with him. Patricia's smile tightened. He's working in his office. You know how he feels about being interrupted during work hours. This is important, I insisted, stepping forward. She didn't move from the doorway. I'll let him know you stopped by. Perhaps you could come back for dinner. I'm making his favorite pot roast. Susan stepped forward. Patricia, either you can let us in to speak with Thomas, or we can take this evidence of check fraud directly to the police. Your choice. Patricia's face drained of color. I don't know what you're talking about. The birthday checks from family members, I clarified. The ones you endorsed with my name and cashed. We have the bank records and signature images. Her composure cracked just enough to reveal panic before she smoothed her expression. There must be some misunderstanding. Perhaps Thomas deposited them for you. Step aside, Patricia, came my father's voice from behind her. He appeared in the hallway, his expression unreadable. Let them in. Patricia had no choice but to move. We followed Dad to the living room where I spread the evidence on the coffee table. Copies of checks with forged endorsements, bank deposit records, and statements from family members. $2,300, I said, pointing to the total I'd calculated. All sent to me as gifts, all intercepted and cashed without my knowledge. Dad examined each document carefully, his face growing darker by the minute. These signatures. This isn't Audrey's handwriting. Patricia perched on the edge of an armchair, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Thomas, I can explain. I was trying to create a surprise fund for Audrey's graduation. I was going to present her with all the money at once as a gift. Then where is it? I challenged. Where's this surprise fund? Because it certainly wasn't at the graduation party. There were expenses, she said vaguely. The party venue required deposits. Dad looked up sharply. You used Audrey's gift money to pay for her party, without telling anyone. It was meant to be a loving gesture, Patricia insisted, her voice taking on a wounded quality. I wanted everything to be perfect for her special day. A loving gesture would have been giving me my mail, I said. A loving gesture would have been asking what kind of celebration I wanted instead of planning something entirely for yourself. That's not fair, Audrey. You've been determined to see the worst in me from the beginning. Dad held up one of the check images. This is forgery, Patricia, and mail theft. These are serious crimes, not misunderstandings. For the first time, real fear flashed across Patricia's face. You wouldn't press charges against your own wife, Thomas. Not over a few mishandled checks. It's not just the checks, Susan interjected. It's a pattern of deception that includes stealing from Audrey's education fund, sabotaging her graduate school applications, isolating you both from family and friends, and systematically erasing Allison from your lives. Dad sat heavily on the sofa, the evidence spread before him. I trusted you, he said quietly to Patricia. I brought you into our home, into our lives when we were at our most vulnerable. And I've done nothing but try to help you both move forward. Patricia's voice rose with indignation. Yes, I made some misguided choices, but my intentions were good. I was trying to help this family heal. By stealing from my daughter, Dad's voice had taken on an edge I'd rarely heard. By lying to me about her future, by cutting us off from the people who loved us before you came along. Patricia's eyes filled with tears, the same tactical crying I'd seen her employ countless times when cornered. I see how it is. You've already decided I'm the villain. Nothing I say matters. What matters are your actions, I said. And they show a clear pattern of deliberate harm. Dad stood up, his decision visibly solidifying. I'd like you to pack your things and leave, Patricia. Today. She stared at him in shock. You can't be serious. Over some misplaced checks, Thomas, we're married. This isn't just about the checks. This is about trust that's been broken beyond repair. He straightened his shoulders, reclaiming some of the strength that had been slowly drained from him over the past year. I'll be contacting a lawyer about divorce proceedings. Patricia's tears dried instantly, her face hardening. You'll regret this, both of you. She stood and stalked from the room. After she left, Dad collapsed back onto the sofa, looking exhausted but somehow lighter. I've been such a fool, he said quietly. You've been grieving, I corrected, sitting beside him. And she took advantage of that. He shook his head. That's no excuse. I let her come between us. I let her make me doubt you, doubt myself. I'm so sorry, Audrey. Susan touched his shoulder gently. The important thing is that you see the truth now. But Thomas, be prepared. People like Patricia don't give up easily when they lose control. Susan's warning proved prophetic. Within hours, Patricia had called Diane, who arrived in a fury, pounding on the door and demanding to speak with my father. When he refused, she began shouting from the driveway. You'll be hearing from our lawyer, Patricia. Sacrificed everything for this family. You'll end up with nothing, Thomas. Nothing. Later that evening, as Dad and I were sorting through financial documents trying to assess the full extent of Patricia's deception, his phone lit up with a text message that made his face go pale. What is it? I asked. He handed me the phone wordlessly. The message from Patricia read, Thomas, I didn't want to tell you this way, but you've left me no choice. I'm pregnant. 8 weeks along. I was waiting until I passed the first trimester to surprise you. Please call me so we can discuss our child's future. The text was accompanied by what appeared to be a pregnancy test showing 2 pink lines. I stared at it in disbelief. Is this possible? I asked, my voice barely audible. Dad ran a hand through his hair. I suppose it could be. Though she told me when we met that she couldn't have children. It was part of why her second marriage ended. I handed the phone back, my mind racing. This changes things, doesn't it? Dad looked torn. I don't know. If she's really pregnant. But after everything that's happened, how can I trust anything she says? We sat in silence, the weight of this new complication settling between us. Finally, I spoke the words neither of us wanted to acknowledge. If she's pregnant, you'll take her back. Dad looked at me, genuine conflict in his eyes. Audrey, I don't know what I'll do. But I do know that I won't let anyone come between us again. Not Patricia, not a baby, not anyone. You're my daughter and I failed you once. I won't do it again. I wanted to believe him, but as I looked at the text message still glowing on his phone, I couldn't shake the feeling that Patricia had just played her most powerful card yet. And deep down, I feared it might be enough to undo everything we'd just accomplished. I barely slept that night, my mind churning with scenarios. If Patricia was truly pregnant, everything would change. My father, with his strong sense of responsibility, would feel obligated to try again with his marriage. We'd be back where we started, but with even higher stakes. By morning, I'd reached a decision. If Patricia was going to fight dirty, we needed to be prepared. I made 2 calls. First to Susan, then to my mother's family lawyer, Martin Goldstein, who had handled her estate after her death. Martin agreed to meet us that afternoon. When Dad hesitated about attending, I was direct. If she's really pregnant, you need to know exactly where you stand legally. And if she's lying, which I strongly suspect, you need protection from whatever she might do next. Dad relented, and we arrived at Martin's downtown office at 2. The lawyer, a man in his 60s who had been friends with my grandparents, greeted us warmly before turning serious. Allison would be heartbroken to see what's happening to her family, he said, motioning us to sit. Let's make sure her daughter and husband are protected. We laid out everything. The intercepted mail, the stolen education fund, the forged checks, and now the pregnancy claim. Martin took detailed notes, his expression growing increasingly grave. This is troubling on multiple levels, he said when we finished. The financial fraud alone is serious, but the pattern of isolation and manipulation is equally concerning. He turned to my father. Thomas, have you verified the pregnancy claim? Dad shook his head. She texted the news last night. I haven't responded yet. Martin nodded thoughtfully. If I may offer some advice, request medical verification before proceeding with any decisions. A text message with a home pregnancy test proves nothing. And if she is pregnant, I asked, voicing the fear that had kept me awake. That complicates matters, but doesn't change the underlying issues. A child doesn't erase fraud or manipulation. Martin pulled a file from his drawer. There's something else you should know. After Allison died, I did some basic research on Patricia when Thomas mentioned his engagement. It's standard practice in estate matters when a surviving spouse remarries. He slid a document across the desk. Patricia has been married twice before, not once as she told you. Her first marriage at age 24 lasted 3 years. Her second at 30 lasted 5 years. Both ended in divorce, both to men considerably older and wealthier than she was. Dad stared at the paper in shock. She told me she was married once to Michael, who died of cancer. Michael Donovan was husband number 3, Martin corrected. And yes, he did die of cancer 4 years ago. But before him were Richard Kent and James Hoffman, both divorced, not deceased. The implications settled over us. Patricia had lied about her past from the very beginning. There's more, Martin continued. After you mentioned the check forgery, I made some calls to colleagues. Patricia's second husband, James Hoffman, filed a police report alleging financial impropriety before their divorce. The case was ultimately dropped as part of their settlement. Dad looked physically ill. What exactly was she accused of? Adding her name to his accounts without authorization and transferring funds to private accounts in her name. Sound familiar? I reached for my father's hand, feeling his fingers trembling beneath mine. What do we do now? He asked, his voice hollow. Martin leaned forward. First, secure your finances. Change all passwords and notify your banks of potential fraud. Second, gather evidence systematically. Statements, correspondence, witness accounts. Third, file for divorce, immediately citing fraud as grounds. And the pregnancy claim, request medical verification from her doctor directly. If she's truly expecting, we'll address custody and support separately from the divorce proceedings. If she's lying, Martin's expression hardened. That becomes additional evidence of manipulation. We left the office with a clear action plan and a weight lifted. At Susan's suggestion, we reached out to my maternal grandparents who lived in Arizona. I hadn't spoken to them much since my mother's death, another connection Patricia had systematically severed. My grandmother wept when I explained everything that had happened. We tried calling so many times, Audrey. Patricia always said you were too busy with school to talk or that you'd call back later. I never got any of those messages, Grandma. We sensed something was wrong, especially when you didn't come for Christmas like you always used to. Your grandfather wanted to drive out there, but I convinced him we shouldn't interfere. I should have trusted his instincts. Their support was immediate and unconditional. Not only did they wire money to help with my education expenses, but they also sent copies of financial records showing additional gifts they'd sent that I'd never received. Dad spent the next day securing our finances and changing locks on the house. Patricia had returned once while we were out taking some clothing, but leaving most of her possessions. Diane called repeatedly, alternating between threats and pleas for reconciliation. Patricia's devastated Thomas, she said when Dad finally answered. She's under tremendous stress, which isn't good for the baby. You need to come to your senses before you lose your wife and child. Dad held firm. I've requested medical verification of the pregnancy, Diane, until I receive that there's nothing to discuss. How dare you question her honesty at a time like this? Her honesty is exactly what's in question, and has been for some time. Patricia's response came the next morning. Not medical records, but a sonogram image texted to my father with the caption, "Your child at 8 weeks. Please come home so we can be a family." Dad showed me the image, his expression troubled. This looks real, doesn't it? I studied the grainy black and white image. Maybe. But so did her story about being widowed once, not divorced twice. Susan, who had become our rock through this ordeal, suggested reaching out to a friend who worked as an ultrasound technician. She examined the image carefully before delivering her verdict. This isn't an 8-week sonogram, she explained, pointing to specific features. This image shows a fetus at approximately 16 weeks. And see this date stamp in the corner. Someone tried to crop it out, but you can still see part of it. This scan is from 2021, not 2025. Dad's relief was palpable. She found it online, he realized. Or it's from someone else's pregnancy. Armed with this information, Martin advised us to proceed with divorce filings immediately. This false pregnancy claim demonstrates the lengths she's willing to go. We need to move quickly before she escalates further. That evening, as Dad and I were reviewing financial records in the living room, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find a police officer standing on our porch. "I'm looking for Audrey Wilson," he said formally. "That's me." "Ma'am, I need to ask you some questions about allegations of theft and harassment." My blood ran cold. "What allegations?" "We received a report that you've been stealing mail and personal items from Patricia Wilson and threatening her safety." Dad appeared behind me. "Officer, those claims are completely false. We have evidence that Patricia has been stealing from Audrey, not the other way around." The officer remained professional but firm. "Sir, I'm just here to investigate the report. May I come in?" For the next hour, we answered questions and presented our evidence. The forged checks, bank statements showing unauthorized withdrawals, and testimonials from family members about intercepted mail. The officer took detailed notes. "I'll need to follow up on this information," he said finally. "But I should inform you that Miss Patricia Wilson has filed for a restraining order against Audrey, claiming she fears for her safety due to threatening behavior." "Threatening behavior," I repeated incredulously. "I haven't even seen her since she moved out. She alleges you've been sending hostile messages and appeared at her sister's home making threats." "That's absolutely false," Dad said firmly. "Audrey has been with me or Susan Blackwell the entire time. We can provide witness statements confirming her whereabouts." The officer nodded. "I'd recommend gathering that documentation. There's a hearing scheduled for the restraining order next Tuesday. You'll need to appear to contest it." After he left, Dad and I sat in stunned silence. Patricia was now actively trying to frame me for the very crimes she had committed. This is how she operates, I realized aloud. When exposed, she doesn't just defend herself. She goes on the offensive, accusing others of exactly what she did. Susan arrived 30 minutes later, bringing dinner and much-needed perspective. "This is actually good news," she said as we picked at our food. "How is a false police report and restraining order good news?" Dad asked. "Because it's desperate and sloppy," Susan explained. "She's making claims that are easily disproven. Every false allegation further undermines her credibility with authorities." The next day I met with a financial crimes investigator, another of my mother's old friends who Susan had contacted. Detective Laura Moore reviewed our evidence with professional interest. "This is a clear pattern of identity theft and mail fraud," she confirmed. "The forged check endorsements alone are enough for criminal charges, but combined with the mail interception and unauthorized account access, you have a solid case." "What about her false police report against me?" Detective Moore's expression was grim, but determined. "That's called filing a false statement, and it's another criminal offense. If you're willing to press charges, I can help build the case. The prospect of seeing Patricia face legal consequences for her actions was both terrifying and validating. After discussing it with Dad and Susan, I decided to move forward. I need to take back control of my life, I explained. As long as Patricia faces no real consequences, she'll keep finding ways to manipulate and harm us. With Detective Moore's guidance, we filed a formal complaint detailing all of Patricia's fraudulent activities. The detective also helped us prepare for the restraining order hearing, gathering affidavits from Susan and others who could confirm my whereabouts during the times Patricia claimed I had threatened her. The night before the hearing, I sat with Susan on her back porch, watching fireflies in the garden my mother had helped her plant years ago. I'm scared, I admitted. Not of the hearing. I know we'll win that. I'm scared that no matter what evidence we present, no matter what legal actions we take, Patricia will find a way to worm back into our lives. Susan squeezed my hand. That's the insidious nature of manipulators like her. They make you doubt your own ability to break free. But you're stronger than she is, Audrey. You have truth on your side, and you have people who genuinely love you. I just hope Dad stays strong. He's been better these past few days, more like his old self. But I've seen how easily Patricia can make him doubt everything. Your father made a mistake trusting the wrong person when he was vulnerable, Susan acknowledged. But he's facing that mistake now, and that takes real courage. As we sat in comfortable silence, my phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. I opened it to find a message from Patricia. Audrey, I know we've had our differences, but this has gone too far. I'm truly pregnant with your half-sibling. Don't let your resentment of me deprive this innocent child of their father. Meet me tomorrow before the hearing. Just you, no Thomas or Susan, and I'll show you proof. We can find a way forward for this family. 10 a.m. Riverside Park by the fountain. I showed Susan the message, my heart racing. It's another trap, she said immediately. She wants to get you alone, possibly, to create a scenario that supports her restraining order claims. Or to offer some kind of deal, I suggested. What if she is pregnant? What if she has actual proof this time? Susan's expression was troubled. Even if she is meeting her, alone would be dangerous. She's already shown she's willing to file false police reports against you. I forwarded the message to Detective Moore, who responded almost immediately. Do not meet with her. This is likely an attempt to either create a confrontation she can use against you or to manipulate you without witnesses. If she has legitimate proof, she can present it at the hearing tomorrow. Despite the clear warning, part of me was tempted to face Patricia directly and perhaps finally understand the depths of her deception. But as I prepared for bed that night, I made my decision. I wouldn't play into her hands again. Tomorrow at the hearing with witnesses and legal protection, we would face Patricia on our terms, not hers. As I drifted off to sleep, I felt a strange calm settling over me. For the first time since this ordeal began, I wasn't reacting to Patricia's manipulations. I was taking control of my own narrative. Whatever happened tomorrow, I would face it with the truth as my shield and the support of people who genuinely loved me. And that, I realized, was something Patricia had never truly experienced. The authentic love and connection she had tried so desperately to destroy. In that moment, beneath my anger and hurt, I felt something unexpected, a flicker of pity for a woman so empty inside that she needed to steal other people's lives to feel whole. The county courthouse was imposingly formal, its marble floors and high ceilings designed to remind everyone inside of the serious nature of legal proceedings. Dad, Susan, and I arrived an hour early for the restraining order hearing, accompanied by Martin, our lawyer. Detective Moore met us in the lobby, professional in a dark suit. I've submitted the evidence of check forgery and mail theft to the prosecutor's office, she informed us quietly. They're reviewing it now to determine whether to file criminal charges. At precisely 10 o'clock, we entered the courtroom. Patricia and Diane were already seated with their attorney, a sleek man in an expensive suit who exuded confidence. Patricia had dressed the part of the frightened pregnant wife. A loose-fitting dress, minimal makeup, hair pulled back simply. She kept one hand protectively over her stomach, the picture of maternal vulnerability. When the judge entered, we all rose. Judge Harriet Simmons, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and penetrating eyes, reviewed the file before her. This is a hearing for a temporary restraining order filed by Patricia Wilson against Audrey Wilson, alleging harassment and threats, she stated. Miss Patricia Wilson, please approach and state your case. Patricia walked to the podium with a slight hesitation in her step, as though physically weakened by stress. Her performance was masterful, voice trembling, as she described feeling terrorized in her own home, frightened for her unborn child, as I supposedly escalated from hostile messages to appearing at Diane's house making threats. Your Honor, I've tried to be a loving stepmother, she concluded, wiping away a tear. But Audrey has resented me from the beginning. Since separating from my husband, her behavior has become increasingly erratic and threatening. I fear for my safety and the safety of my unborn child. Her attorney submitted printouts of text messages, allegedly from me, containing angry, threatening language. He also presented a written statement from Diane, corroborating Patricia's claim that I had appeared at her house shouting threats. When it was our turn, Martin approached calmly. Your Honor, we vigorously contest these allegations and have evidence that Miss Patricia Wilson has engaged in a pattern of deception, including identity theft, mail fraud, and false statements to police. For the next 30 minutes, Martin methodically dismantled Patricia's claims. He presented affidavits from Susan and others confirming my whereabouts during the times Patricia claimed I had threatened her. He showed evidence that the threatening text messages had come from a prepaid phone purchased at a convenience store near Diane's house, a store where security footage showed Patricia shopping the day before the first message was sent. Most damning was the testimony of my phone carrier's security specialist, who confirmed the threatening texts could not have originated from my device or account. As our evidence mounted, I watched Patricia's confident facade crack. Her attorney looked increasingly uncomfortable, whispering urgently to her as each new piece of evidence was presented. Then came the moment that changed everything. Your Honor, Martin said regarding Miss Wilson's pregnancy claim, which she has used both to attempt reconciliation with her husband and as part of her victim narrative today, we submit the following. He presented the false sonogram image Patricia had sent, along with an expert statement from Susan's ultrasound technician friend, identifying it as a 16-week image from 2021, not an 8-week image from 2025. Furthermore, Martin continued, we have medical records from West Shore Medical Center dated 3 years ago, where Patricia Wilson underwent a complete hysterectomy following complications from endometriosis. A gasp rippled through the courtroom. Patricia's face drained of color. These records were provided by her previous physician after Mr. Thomas Wilson requested verification of her pregnancy claim, Martin explained. Patricia Wilson cannot be pregnant because she physically cannot bear children, a fact she concealed from Mr. Wilson throughout their relationship and marriage. The judge's expression hardened as she reviewed the medical records. Miss Wilson, she addressed Patricia directly, are you claiming these medical records are fraudulent? Patricia's attorney rose quickly. Your Honor, may I request a brief recess to confer with my client? No, Judge Simmons said firmly. I want an answer to my question. Miss Wilson, are you claiming you did not have a hysterectomy as these medical records indicate? Patricia seemed to shrink before our eyes, the confident manipulator replaced by a cornered fraud. The records are accurate, Your Honor, she finally admitted, her voice barely audible. Judge Simmons removed her glasses, fixing Patricia with a stern gaze. Let me be clear about what has happened here today. You have come into my courtroom seeking protection based on allegations that appear to be entirely fabricated. You have falsely claimed to be pregnant to manipulate this court's sympathies. You have submitted fraudulent evidence and possibly perjured yourself. She turned to Patricia's attorney. Counselor, I suggest you advise your client of her Fifth Amendment rights before she says anything further. The attorney nodded grimly, looking as though he regretted taking the case. Judge Simmons continued, the petition for a restraining order is denied. Furthermore, I am referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for investigation into possible charges of filing a false report perjury and misuse of court resources. She turned to us. Mr. Wilson, Miss Wilson, you are free to go. I apologize that the court's time and resources were wasted on these false allegations. As we exited the courtroom, Detective Moore was waiting. The prosecutor has decided to file charges based on the check forgery and mail theft, she informed us quietly. They'll likely add additional charges after today's hearing. Patricia and Diane hurried past us, avoiding eye contact. Patricia's attorney remained behind, engaged in serious conversation with Martin. As we watched, Martin nodded and approached us. Patricia's attorney has indicated she's willing to return all funds and family heirlooms in exchange for us not pressing additional charges, he explained. It's your decision, but it might be the quickest way to recover what was taken. Dad looked at me questioningly. What do you think, Audrey? It's mostly your money she took. I considered briefly. The money matters less to me than making sure she can't do this to anyone else. I want to proceed with charges. Detective Moore nodded approvingly. The prosecutor will take your wishes into account, but ultimately they'll decide which charges to pursue based on the evidence. Outside the courthouse, we found Patricia waiting by our car, her vulnerable act abandoned. Diane stood nearby, car keys in hand, ready for a quick escape. You've ruined everything, Patricia hissed, her face contorted with rage. I gave you both a chance at a real family, at moving forward, and this is how you repay me. Dad stepped protectively in front of me. You never wanted a family, Patricia. You wanted control. You wanted to erase Allison and isolate us from everyone who reminded us of her. She's been dead for years, Thomas. It was time to move on. Moving on doesn't mean forgetting, I said quietly. It doesn't mean cutting ourselves off from the people who loved her, and us. Patricia's anger seemed to collapse into something smaller and more bitter. You have no idea what it's like coming into a family that worships a ghost. Nothing I did could ever measure up to Saint Allison. You never tried to be yourself, Dad pointed out. From the beginning you were playing a role, the perfect second wife, the compassionate stepmother, but it was all calculated. You saw us as targets, not people to love. Patricia's mouth twisted. Think whatever you want. But remember this, I'm not going down alone. By the time I'm done, everyone will know what a vindictive, unstable girl you raised, Thomas. Your precious Allison would be so disappointed. It was a final attempt to wound us, to plant seeds of doubt that might blossom later into regret. But the words fell flat, their power dissolved by the truth we now understood clearly. Goodbye, Patricia, Dad said, simply taking my arm and guiding me around her to our car. As we drove away, I watched Patricia and Diane growing smaller in the side mirror until they disappeared completely. It felt symbolic, the threat they had posed diminishing with distance and time. The following weeks brought a flurry of legal activity. Patricia was charged with multiple counts of mail fraud, identity theft, and filing false reports. Rather than face trial, she accepted a plea deal that included restitution, probation, and mandatory counseling. During this time, Dad and I began the delicate process of rebuilding our relationship and our lives. We started seeing a family therapist who specialized in helping people recover from manipulative relationships. What Patricia did is often called coercive control, Dr. Levine explained during one session. She systematically isolated you, both eroded your trust in each other and replaced your reality with one she controlled. Recovery takes time. 6 months later, on a perfect spring day, I hosted a do-over graduation celebration in my mother's garden behind our family home. Susan had helped us restore it after years of neglect under Patricia's reign. The rose bushes my mother had lovingly tended were blooming again, their scent filling the air as family and friends gathered to celebrate not just my academic achievement but our family's healing. My grandparents had flown in from Arizona. Mom's friends brought dishes made from her recipes. Jenna helped me decorate with photos of Mom that Patricia had hidden away in the attic. Dad seemed lighter than he had in years, laughing with his brother-in-law over memories of my mother. State University had reinstated my fellowship after learning of the extraordinary circumstances. I would begin their clinical psychology program in the fall with a focus on helping people recover from psychological manipulation and coercive control. Dad had started attending a support group for people who had been in relationships with manipulative partners. I'm learning to trust my instincts again, he told me one evening, and to recognize the red flags I missed with Patricia. As the summer progressed, we established new rituals while honoring old ones. We visited Mom's grave together on her birthday, bringing her favorite sunflowers. We had dinner with Susan every Sunday. We rebuilt connections with friends and family who had been pushed away during Patricia's time in our lives. By August, I had moved into a small apartment near campus, decorated with treasures recovered from Patricia's storage unit, photos of my mother, the quilt she had made me, books that had been accidentally donated. Dad helped me arrange furniture and hang pictures, both of us conscious of the new chapter beginning. On my first night alone in the apartment, I video called Dad and Susan, who were having dinner together at our family home. They held up glasses in a toast to my new beginning. I'm so proud of you, Audrey Dad, said his eyes crinkling with genuine happiness. Not just for your accomplishments, but for your strength through all of this. You never stopped fighting for the truth, even when I couldn't see it. We both got manipulated, I reminded him, but we found our way back to what matters. Your mother would be so proud, Susan added, her smile gentle. She always said you had a resilient spirit. After we ended the call, I sat on my balcony watching the sunset, reflecting on the journey of the past year. From the devastation of being excluded from my own graduation party to rebuilding my life and relationship with my father, I had learned painful but valuable lessons. I'd learned that manipulation often comes disguised as care. That isolation is the first step in controlling someone. That standing up for the truth may cost you temporarily, but saves you in the end. Most importantly, I'd learned that family isn't just about blood or legal ties. It's about the people who see you clearly, who support you unconditionally, who fight for your well-being even when it's difficult. As darkness fell and stars appeared in the sky, I made a promise to myself. I would use everything I'd learned, the pain, the betrayal, the recovery, to help others recognize and escape manipulation. I would transform my experience into expertise that could protect vulnerable people from predators like Patricia. And I would never again allow anyone to make me wait outside the celebration of my own life. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself against someone who tried to push you out of your own life? I'd love to hear your stories and how you found the strength to reclaim your truth. Please share in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video if it resonated with you. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you the courage to recognize manipulation when it appears, and the strength to protect yourself and those you love.